How's it going, everyone? Thank you so much for being here today for this panel Red Labor is hosting, along with our lovely guests from LeftVoice and Teamster Mobilize. This is the UPS Teamsters Tentative Agreement and the role of the DSA. We're going to have a sort of roundtable discussion here today. And I'm really excited to hear from all these great panelists. A lot of these people are UPS workers themselves. They either have voted or will be voting on the contract. And I think the issues we'll be talking about today are really, really important, especially, a DSA in its role. It's trying to be a platform for the working class. We did send out a lot of invites to various different caucuses. Many NPC members, unfortunately, they either were not able to make it or did not respond to the invite. That being said, we do have, I believe, a couple DSA members from different chapters on the panel who may or may not be current UPS Teamsters. That being said, without further ado, I think it'd be great if we went ahead and gave a quick 1-minute introduction from all of our panelists here. We're going to start with that first order for the first questions, and we'll just use that to introduce yourselves. So again, let's go ahead and only have one mic open at one time for any guests here attending the panel, this discussion here. If you would refrain from using the chat until our Q&A section, which then you can stack or type your questions in the chat at the end. I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Luigi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Luigi. I work at UPS in a facility that is here in New York City. I'm a preload, a member of local 804 of the Teamsters, and also a member of LeftVoice.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name's Tony. I'm a UPS worker, rank and file Teamster in local 174 in the Seattle, Washington area. Really happy to be here and talk about this important issue. I should also mention I'm a member of Teamsters Mobilize and a steering committee member on the Vote No campaign.
Thank you, Tony. Up next, Jess.
Hey guys, my name is Jess. I am a part-timer on the preload in Griffin, Georgia. I've been with UPS about 6 years and been a shop steward for 4 years. Thanks everyone for having us here to speak tonight. I look forward to it.
Thank you, Jess. Up next, Audrey.
Hey everyone, I'm Audrey. I'm a part-time sorter, unloader in North Jersey, local 177. I got involved with Teamsters Mobilize shortly before the tentative agreement came out, so a few months ago, and have been involved in the Vote No organizing. Yeah, very excited to be here today to talk about, the importance of seeing clearly what actually this tentative agreement represents and why it's important for us all to be, pushing to vote this contract down.
Thank you, Andrea. Up next, Matthew. Okay, moving over to Jose.
Yeah, buenas tardes. My name is Jose Francisco Negrete. I'm out of local 952 out here in Anaheim, California. Twilight sort, 25-year part-timer. I'm also part of Teamster Mobilize. I would like to say gracias for allowing us this space to communicate with other workers, whether they're in UPS or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Up next, Shuvu.
Yeah, my name is Shuvu. I'm New York City DSA. I'm a special education teacher in New York. And I got invited here as a panelist just for being a very vocal vote no supporter inside of the DSA. I am not speaking on behalf of Red Labor or any caucus. I'm in the Marxist Unity group, but I'm suspended temporarily. So I'm not speaking for Marxist Unity Group either. I just think that for such a important issue as to whether socialists should come out for vote no, DSA has had a new elected NPC, yet the silence is really, really stark. I think it's really the responsibility of DSA labor leadership and NPC to come out and say something as to why we're not coming out for vote no, why we're taking an abstentionist stance. What's the reasoning behind this? So I hope this discussion spurs some sort of a pressure for folks within the leadership to really step up and voice their opinions. So thank you for having me on, Red Labor. Thank you for all the panelists here. Excited to see how this meeting develops.
Thank you, Shuvu. Up next, Corbin.
Hello, Corbin Pelican. I'm a UPS driver out of St. Louis, Missouri, Teamsters Local 688. I'm also a member of the St. Louis DSA. I've been quite critical openly of the DSA's position so far, or rather lack thereof, on this contract or on this tentative agreement and the entire contract campaign. Sort of its tailless position and of leadership rather. And yeah, I look forward to the discussion we're going to have.
Wonderful. Okay, that's all our panelists introducing themselves. Let's go ahead and jump into this first question here. The media has painted the UPS TA as a historic victory, with numerous misleading headlines of UPS workers making $170K a year. Sean O'Brien and the Teamsters leadership have been painted as heroes of the working people. And why do you think that is? And what is the truth about this contract and about the Teamsters leadership? We'll be using that same first order that we used to introduce ourselves, starting off with Luigi.
So I will try to keep it short because it's a lot of us. So, there are all these headlines that are saying that drivers are doing 170K per year, which is actually, not true. When a driver gets a job at UPS, they start with I think now it's 25 hours, dollars an hour. And they have like a 4 or 5 years progression to reach to the top rate. So, and to get that money, they are counting absolutely, doing overtime, counting, all the money that they get from other aspects, like for example, insurance, pensions, etc. So I think all this campaign is coming mainly to undermine the possibility of a vote no, because this is putting the people against you. Like how you will tell to the media later, no, we are voting no because this contract is not enough. And they have been saying everywhere that UPS now are rich worker, and they are having, all these memes that try to be funny, but, it's a conscious media operation to make to put pressure on the vote yes, because now we see that the press is not highlighting so much the problems that we have, but actually the good aspects of the contract. And I feel like the intention is clearly to isolate the vote no. And I think, so in the beginning, the media, politicians, DSA elected officials, other left groups, and union leaders, everyone came up immediately to say historic contract. They say this without reading the full contract, because in that moment there was only highlights put by the union. Workers didn't have time to say something, to read it. And again, all these people immediately saying if it is historical or not, it's their opinion, whatever, but if you say this before us reading the contract, also means something. Like you are immediately rush to congratulate the union leadership without knowing what we think. So it's clearly, part also of an agenda. Like you see all the presidential candidates of the Democratic Party saying huge victory, this is a record, this is amazing. And I feel like now, especially because 2 weeks already hasn't gone, a lot of the voices of why people is voting no are coming out. Like today, I just read an article in the New York Times. We were interviewed by NPR and many mainstream media that a little watered down and diluted, but they have to change their public opinion because the people who is not happy is a lot. Like Labor Notes, who has a favorable view of the contract, just put out an article also saying the expectations were above the gains. I feel like it's also important to show what are the no gains, what are the things that we didn't get, and which aspects are things that actually goes against workers' benefit, etc. And I feel like this shift is because a lot of people, some of us, we are more outspoken, we appear in media in this type of event, but if we wouldn't have on our backs a lot of people voting no, this wouldn't go nowhere. But the fact that all this keeps appearing despite the huge propaganda from the union leaders, the media, politicians, mean that a lot of people is not happy. And the spectrum is large for those reasons, but that is definitely a sentiment that we could have fight for more, or we should have no any aspect of concession in this contract if we could go on a strike. And the people who voted was 97% in favor of a striking. A week, not even a week, 5-6 days before going on strike, there was no news about the TA, and everyone was ready. Everyone was seeing that, okay, TA is not coming, strike gonna happen soon. People was doing practice picketing, we're saving money for years. We have been talking about this for a whole year, and we were ready to strike. And definitely, if we had gone on strike, probably we have got a better contract, and we have got it, through class struggle, taking to the streets, because this is not only about the contract, but it's to increase our work as a rank and file members, to bring more organizing at the workplace, and going through that experience will have definitely make us stronger to fight back the company, because even the best aspect of this contract, I'm gonna be challenged by the company all the time, because that place is insane. It's all the time against us, the lack of respect, supervisors working, trying to send us home, making us work the less hour possible. So I feel like a strike would have prepared the membership also to go after the company in a daily basis, not just for the big moment of the contract. But I will stop there.
Thank you, Luigi. Really quick, let's try to keep this to around 3 minutes, everyone. We do have 4 questions to get through. If you go a little bit over, that's fine. No worries. Moving over to Jess.
Hey, guys. Sorry, I'm a little confused. Are we just, is there a topic question that we are discussing specifically, or are we just discussing some of our concerns?
Yeah, the question that was asked, sorry, I think it's just been posted in the chat there. The media has painted the UPS TA as a historic victory with numerous misleading headlines of UPS workers making $170K a year. Sean O'Brien and the Teamsters leadership have been painted as heroes of the working people. Why do you think that is? And what is the truth about this contract and about the Teamsters leadership?
Yeah, that's extremely misleading. it's misleading for a lot of reasons. Even drivers that are at top pay right now, most drivers, first of all, they're not bringing home $170,000. You know, they're adding the value of healthcare. They're adding the value of the pension, which, you know, if we really want to talk about pension there, you know, that's money that, you know, you hope you live long enough to see. First of all, you hope you still have the fiscal ability to enjoy your retirement, and the pensions are below what they should be for replacing the type of income that a top paid driver would be making. So, but even with that thrown in, most people still aren't making 170K. You know, maybe closer to like that 120, 130. But that's somebody that's working, you know, 50, 60 hours a week. And that's too much. And, you know, if you ask me, anybody that's working 60 hours a week, like that person should be making a lot of money. If they're sacrificing that kind of time, whether they have a family, you know, you don't have a lot of life left working 60 hours a week. That's just the truth of it. Your life is work. So somebody making that sacrifice should be making a lot of money. They should be getting a pension. They should be getting health care. That's not historic. That's treatment that people deserve. And more people deserve that. And, you know, I know one guy, you know, he said, you know, you shouldn't question if somebody's making too much. You know, why aren't you making more? You know, like I think somebody compared it to nurses or somebody in a similar field that is also a difficult job. Like everybody should be making more. Like most people's wages have not kept up with inflation. Like people doing like good, valuable work, like people in education, people in healthcare, like nurses, you know, people like us, people that make the world run essentially and are just highly valuable. Like their value in their pocket is going down with buying power and the times. And yeah, everything is, you know, that message was put out to make the public's eyes jump out and think that people are taking home that in their paycheck. And that's just not the case. It's not anywhere close. So yeah, they want to put the public against us. They want all the little people to just fight amongst themselves and distract from what's really going on. So that they can keep the status quo when, you know, everybody needs to be demanding better, because the wealth of our country is rising further and further and further and further to the top. And there's less and less for the majority of us to try to survive on.
Thank you, Jess. Moving over to Tony.
Hello. Thanks for this question. Yeah, I think what this question highlights is how three forces are aligned in their understanding of this tentative agreement and touting it as a historic win. One, UPS, you know, claiming UPS CEO Carol Tomé speaking in the interest of her Wall Street shareholders, saying that she thinks this contract is a win-win-win, a win for the customers, a win for the shareholders, a win for the workers. Likewise, the IBT leadership is touting this as a historic win for workers. And then the Biden administration also making public statements saying they're so happy that a strike was averted and, you know, an agreement was reached. But who is missing from this this historic win bombast? It's the rank and file workers. Despite the Teamsters leadership social media propaganda campaign, in which they're using you know, members' dues to to influence and mislead Teamsters around the country about this TA. What these headlines of UPS workers making 170K a year continues to hide is that drivers only make up about 25% of the UPS workforce. Part-timers, inside warehouse workers who have much different conditions, half the pay, relegated to part-time work, overnight work, compose about 50 to 60%. And UPS loves to highlight, the pay of of the full-time workers, the drivers, to show all UPS workers as greedy. And it should be noted that part-time conditions are the result of 50 plus years of Teamsters leadership concessions. Creating the part-time tier in the first place, dropping the pay in 1982, and keeping the pay at that same 1983 rate for 30 years at $8 an hour. We're still, Teamsters workers, UPS workers are still in that hole that has been dug for us by Teamsters leadership concessions. And this tentative agreement is no different, despite the bombastic language from our union leadership. This TA includes new concessions for part-timers, opens up part-timers to 7-day operations, 7-day-a-week work operations, and importantly includes a new tier of lower paid part-timers. So while there's all this bombast about the erasing of the lower driver tier, what's called the 22-4 drivers from last contract's concessions, we have a new tier replacing it. So this is these are just a couple of reasons of why Teamsters around the country are getting organized to vote no and fight for more.
Thank you, Tony. Moving over to Audrey.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think people have made some very good points already. So, okay, I guess for the question of why has Sean O'Brien and the rest of the Teamsters leadership, like his VP, Fred Zuckerman, been painted as heroes of the working people? Yeah, first of all, I just want to say it was pretty astounding, not so surprising, but to see like the minute that the tentative agreement came out, which was very clearly, in my opinion, very clearly a betrayal. I think it was a sellout contract. It's full of concessions, which, like Tony just mentioned, just a few of them. And it was clear as soon as like those bullet points came out. But it feels like within the hour, all the kind of mainstream corporate media wrote articles saying this is, just exactly parroting the IBT leadership. And then not just the corporate media, but a lot of supposedly kind of leftist progressive media or organizations, just like exactly parroting the IBT leadership's line, saying that this was so amazing, saying that, oh, the Teamsters, fought and they won and this is what they got. So, okay, the question is like, why is that happening? I think it's because, I think the capitalist class, including the Biden and the government and the shareholders and executives of UPS, obviously they're very afraid of actual working class struggle, even something, like a strike. And yeah, it would have been a very significant strike and people were excited about it. I was excited about the possibility of it. And so were my coworkers, not just for the sake of kind of going on strike, but because, we saw that there was a real need to do that, to fight to even claw back the things that UPS has been taking from UPS workers over the last few decades. kind of in concert with the union leadership from before, which had just given countless concessions. So even just to get those things back, not even yet talking about like fighting for more, like trying to advance instead of just defending ourselves, even just to do that, I think we needed to strike. And I had coworkers who hadn't really thought about going on strike before. But then especially those last few weeks before the tentative agreement came out, we're saying, you know what? Yeah, we should. Like, we shouldn't just kind of accept our working conditions and pay as they are and just think, okay, yeah, this is, we can't do anything. Like, we should actually take a stand. Yeah, it's not easy to go on strike, but we have to. And I think we saw like the Biden administration, UPS, and the IBT leadership itself, they all were putting out very clear signs that they wanted to avert a strike. And so I think that the reason that O'Brien is being hailed as this like labor hero is because he's like working very neatly within the confines of actually what serves the interests of the rich and powerful. He's kind of putting on the show of militancy, but then, and I think some people thought, okay, he's going to be different. Like he's not going to just be like Hoffa Jr. But then the way that it's played out, okay, like they kept us totally in the dark during the negotiations, which the previous leadership had done. And then they gave major concessions to UPS and just like flat out ignored a lot of the demands of the workers. And so I think, he's basically like the leadership acted in the same way as previous leadership, but with a kind of militant veneer. So that's very good for the ruling class, because then they can divert people's real anger and outrage into saying, okay, well, look, we have this supposed militant leader, Sean O'Brien. So I think that's why he and this kind of new leadership are being hailed as heroes of the working class, which I think they're very clearly not. And I think in terms of what does it say? Is it shows that we can't rely on them. We absolutely can't just like follow what they're saying, and they're telling us that it's so great of a contract and we should just trust them. But it shows that we need to be organized ourselves as UPS workers, which is what we have been doing as the Vote No campaign in the last few weeks. So anyways, yeah, those are just a few thoughts.
Thank you, Audrey. Moving over to Jose.
Yes, regarding the question in hand, let me look at it real quick. We could just see the media is just portraying that UPS drivers, make $170K a year. My fellow Teamsters and Teamster Mobilize already addressed it, but it's funny that they only highlight that, but they never highlight the wages of part-timers who've been historically left out. They're again being left out in this tentative agreement where they're putting they get rid of 1-2 tier system, but we have multiple tiers in UPS through classification. And they put part-timers in this new tier as well. So it's funny, they mention the $170K, but they don't mention the part-timer who's working 2 to 3 jobs, to sustain their family, because for some reason their time to go driving is not up. It's not there yet, or they can't go driving for whatever respective reasons that they have, that they can't go driving. Sometimes it's beyond their control that they can't go driving. And if they can't go driving, you have to wait for a combo job or a full-time inside job. And to wait for those, especially if you're in a smaller hub, it's a 20-year wait. So, your family's not going to wait 20 years for you to go full-time. So you have to hustle as much as you can, working 2 or 3 jobs. Some of us are on government assistance. Some of us are living in shelters. And unfortunately, some of us are living in, some of us are unhoused, which is it's a smack in the face to all of us. If you're a Teamster or if you're any union member and you're unhoused, that's a problem. And if your contract cannot fix that problem, then you let the membership down. And there was a Newsweek article that was published several days ago by somebody that was on the rank and file committee. And speaking for myself, I do love the idea of a rank and file committee, but a rank and file committee shouldn't be appointed. A rank and file committee should be elected by their members, wherever local they're at or wherever hub they're at. You know, let the membership decide who they want at that table representing them, because it's the rank and file that knows best. Business agents, principal officers, they come around when they come around, but you're detached from the everyday hustle and the everyday grind and the everyday harassment that we go through. So she published this article, and one of her lines was, this contract is going to uplift the lives of a lot of rank and file on the first day. And I shook my head, and I was floored, because this tentative agreement will not uplift the hardships of our rank and file on the first day. It will not. You know, and Audrey was hitting some great points. We shouldn't look to these leaders as our saints, our messiahs. No, you should look to each other. We're the ones who will reject this contract. I hope we do. You know, we're the ones that are the true leaders in the shop floor. It's the rank and file. It's us, not anybody in this marble palace in Washington, D.C. or principal officer 15 miles away from the hub, or 20 miles or 3 miles away from the hub. It's us. You know, so I don't believe that this tentative agreement does anything to uplift the lives of part-timers. I don't think it does anything to uplift the lives of regular package car drivers. I don't think it does anything to help out 22-3s who are $6 short, who are $6 behind a regular package car drivers, yet they do the same work. They're both full-time, but one is deemed more essential than the other. No, well, all work should be all equal pay, equal work for equal pay. And thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Moving over to Shuvu.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I'll try to be really quick on this, but I think that the question is really good, because that really shows the forces that the working class and any real revolutionary is up against when trying to push forward huge change in the society. I think to answer this question, let's just look at how the rail strike was broken. Okay, so rail companies are owned by these huge finance institutions like BlackRock and Vanguard, the same forces that own UPS. And in the case of the rail strike, you had a TA that was one of the central leaders for pushing forward. That TA was actually Sean O'Brien. When the tentative agreement first came out, Sean O'Brien and the Teamsters leadership actually praised the TA. This TA was rejected by the rank and file and some of the biggest rail unions in the country. And a strike was now a possibility. So the ruling class, led by finance capital, led by their puppets in DC, what do? Well, they brought it to Congress and they voted to crush the strike. Okay. Now, in this case, in UPS, we have a similar-ish situation, except the ruling class, I think, has a trusted guy in the leadership of the Teamsters Union, which we should have seen this coming. I think one of the folks here in this panel, not speaking but as an audience member, is Edgar Esquivel, and that comrade, the UPSer, has done excellent work in actually shedding light into the history of the Teamsters Union. And I think here we have a situation where the ruling class had a sympathetic figure in the leadership of the Teamsters Union. He pushed forward his leadership, pushed forward extremely undemocratic, opaque contract negotiations. They constantly gaslit members, constantly lied to members, and now is pushing forward a TA, which, and I think this is the really interesting part, immediately after the TA was released, you had dozens and dozens of Democratic Party politicians, the White House come out in support Okay, you had UPS come out and support, and Finance Capital also controls the media apparatus. The media is running story after story saying how this is a great contract. Everyone wants to be a UPSer now. So I think it just really shows the forces that we're up against. And the Vote No movement, the folks here who are leading the Vote No movement, these are the figures, these are the forces that I think will really go on to build something truly oppositional and truly for the rank and file. So I think that's my answer to the question.
Thank you, Shuvu. Moving over to Corbin.
So I'll also try to keep it a little brief. So I think as we've seen with the especially from the IBT directly, the strong Vote Yes campaign that they've been running, financed by our own money, and in collaboration with the state, through both the Biden presidency and a wide array, like Shuvu mentioned, of Democratic Party politicians, in collaboration also with the shareholders and the representatives of UPS, have all come together, perhaps even more perfectly than they did in 2018, to push this contract in the 2018 contract, to push this contract down our members' throats, and to convince us that that this is the best that we could ever possibly imagine for ourselves. The best. This is all we deserve. They pushed that through the misleading framing of $170,000 a year in pay or in compensation that's been circulating on social media and on news media, traditional news media as well. It's there to suppress the working class itself at UPS from thinking they deserve more. Because one, it's not true, as it's been explained. I don't think I have to explain it all over again. But two, it stifles any expectations, and it destroys any solidarity between different segments of the working class. It will be very difficult now that this misleading information has been spread, to create that solidarity among the working class, no matter where they work, should UPS ever go on strike, because this is the idea that people have now, that we exist as like some sort of a privileged worker above and better than everyone else, when it's just not the case. With why the media and why everyone's basically conglomerated around it, I think Audrey put it well. We've seen like the forces of the state again, the capital, and their willing agents and Sean O'Brien and the IBT bureaucracy have created the best branding possible for this contract to go through. And that's what I think we've seen over the past 5 years, from 2018 to now. There's been this realization that the traditional Jimmy Hoffa Jr. Line of branding of union contracts just wouldn't work anymore. And they found a new branding that, at least for now, may work. I mean, it remains to be seen. The voting isn't concluded yet, but it's not something I think many people were expecting. And it's like the 180 in framing or in what they've been pushing. I don't think was expected, and it's caught, I think, everyone, at least to some degree, off guard, save for a few people. But if we're not able to prepare for the eventual betrayal like that, then it's very difficult to spontaneously defeat it.
Thank you, Corbin. All right. Normally for red labor panels, we will have a second round of that same order for the same question to give responses to differing viewpoints. I think for the sake of time, and because there's such a consensus on this question, let's go ahead and move to the second one. Really quick here. Thank you again to our panelists. Please check out Teamsters Mobilize. Please check out LeftVoice. They are essential, I think, to this TA and this question and the labor movement at large. Second question here is, we are told by labor leaders that it is not the place for unions to get involved in politics. However, many feel this rule isn't followed by labor leaders themselves. For example, Sean O'Brien has been a very frequent visitor to the White House. In your estimation, what is the relation between the union bureaucracy and the Democratic Party? And what impact does this have on union activities? Starting this question off with Tony.
Yeah, despite the militant veneer of the current Teamsters union leadership, this TA shows that this leadership is more of the same when it comes to coordinating with the ruling class, be it in the Republican or Democratic Party. And we see this coordination happen both at the local and the international level. Here in my local in Seattle, union dues in my local are used to finance Democratic candidate elections for kickbacks, such as lucrative government contracts with the city of Seattle. Yeah, at the international level, we see this coordination as well. The Biden administration met many times with the IBT leadership and the negotiating committee to ensure that no national strike would occur, and threaten Biden's electability in the coming election. So we see a close collaboration, and as I said in my previous statement, this has been going on for decades, and this is why the worker struggle in the Vote No campaign is so vitally important. Is that it can be a counterweight to this class collaborationist union leadership. What impact does this collaboration have on union activities? Vote No workers and worker organizers around the country have been harassed, threatened, assaulted, smeared by IBT local leadership, and as well as international IBT campaigns, smearing us as outside agitators, or strangely, union busters. So we see this this repression of the workers' movement come from our own union leaders.
Thank you, Tony. Moving over to Shuvu.
So I'm going to pass this question over to the other panelists.
Thank you, Shuvu. Moving over to Andre.
Yeah, I think Tony already described a good deal, and also in the chat here, there's some it's very obvious how much the White House was intervening in the negotiations in order to make sure there was no strike. I mean, they said it pretty clearly. And, then once the TA came out, the Biden administration, put out a press release. They're so happy that an agreement could be reached, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, I think, we live in a class society where there are different, social economic classes, and the working class and the ruling capitalist class have antagonistic interests. There's no situation where both the interests of like the workers and the capitalists can be met in this situation. Like, oh, a great deal. Like a win-win-win, as Carol Tomei said. So like that situation, that kind of neutrality doesn't exist. So the question is then, like, what class actually is being served in any given kind of contract negotiations or situation like this? And in this situation, it's very obvious that our union leadership worked very, very closely with the Democratic Party, with the state, various levels of the state, in order to push this bad TA on us. And like others have mentioned, like all these different Democratic Party politicians have been coming out saying, oh, they care about and support the UPS workers in our struggle. All these same politicians, including AOC, who voted to make it illegal for the rail workers to strike last year. So those are just lies. And so I think we've seen that the IBT leadership and the Democratic Party are very, very close. And what impact does this have is, like they're working together in order to actually crush real like militancy and working class struggle. Like Tony mentioned, a lot of us, and including Bernie Sanders, of course, a lot of us involved in the Vote No organizing and campaign, like have been like smeared and attacked by our local officials. The IBT like Twitter account posted graphics saying that anyone who's telling you that there are concessions in this contract is lying to you. They're selling you short. There's these claims of like misinformation from the Vote No campaign, which is very like very false. And also like that's the exact same rhetoric that's being used by the state, by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, in order to quell dissent around many of the different issues that we're facing in our society right now, like the claims of misinformation, disinformation, being justifications for censorship. So I think we're seeing a very similar thing with how the union leadership is reacting. I think what does this show is that, not only should we not place our faith in these labor leaders just because they say that they're militants, but we absolutely cannot place our faith in the Democratic Party to be any better for the working class than the Republican Party is. I think they both serve the interests of capital. They have a different kind of presentation on it, but they've sold out the workers time and again, both parties. So yeah.
Thank you, Audrey. Moving over to Jose.
The relationship between the union bureaucracy and the Democratic Party, like it's been expressed by Audrey and Tony, they're in collaboration with each other. We live in a system that has a duopoly political party. Same stick, but two different ends. There's no difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Both don't do nothing to push the working class agenda. All they do is just push corporate agenda down our throats and call it progress. The impact that this might have on union activities, we've seen it with the railroad workers, where they squashed the strike. But with that, the railroad workers never gave up. Railroad workers union United have been doing excellent work. Still out there engaging the rank and file and doing the work that needs to be done, and not putting their faith in this duopoly and these politicians. They're putting their faith with themselves and the working class and the rank and file, and the Teamsters should be doing the same thing as well. I just knowing the Teamsters history There has been backlash to those who dissented in the past, so sometimes you just got to brace yourself if you're going to be speaking truth to power, because when you speak truth to power, there's a target on your back. And I'll pass it on to whoever's next.
Thank you, Jose. Moving over to Corbin.
So one of the ways I like to explain, or I think is a good way to view what's happened to the Teamsters over the past few years, is the growth, and whether it's mutually beneficial or not can be a discussion. But yeah, a growth of the influence of the Democratic Party within the union leadership. For what everyone says about Hoffa, he wasn't an exact pawn of the Democratic Party leadership in the same way that Sean O'Brien has been. He was not more radical because of that. He was slightly more conservative than what Democratic Party politicians would have preferred. But regardless, the growth of control of the Democratic Party over the union can be seen in things like what Shiva said in the answer for the prior question. The immediate release of statements by dozens of Democratic Party politicians that went alongside with the announcement of the tentative agreement by the IBT, celebrating the historic agreement. It's that sort of collaboration that didn't exist in 2018. It didn't exist under Hoffa generally. It's become so they're so deeply intertwined now, I guess is the way to put it, that they follow the lead of the other, and rather the IBT follows the lead in the interest of the Democratic Party, and it's led to where we are now, where so many forces have gathered around and to suppress any opposition to any independent thinking with regards to this contract, with regards to the railroad strike. There's been a concerted effort to utilize this new alliance between IBT leadership and the Democratic Party to essentially quash class consciousness, and it's had a negative effect on the ability to organize both at UPS and elsewhere. When, as I've repeated so many times, when people you believed you could trust sell you out, usually you don't realize it until it's too late. And that's the effort and the struggle we're having right now, is to show to people that you've been betrayed, that you've been lied to, and you've been misled, and it's through this alliance that it's been so easy for them to get away with it so far.
Thank you, Corbin. Moving over to Luigi.
Hey, so I agree with everyone has already said. I agree that the relationship between the union leaderships and democratic parties is, one of the main issues that we have in the labor movement. Even if we want to think, other teams that were saying how the condition of the part-timers has like 4 decades of betrayals and destroying our working conditions. And in these 4 decades, we had many Democratic Party governments, and they were part of the neoliberal offensive that destroyed workers' rights, that allowed this division to happen. And the work of both Republican Party and the Democrats, both of them had set the base for all the logistic industry to be able to super exploit workers, because there is no way that UPS will be making all these profits without having the majority of their workforce in a super precarious working conditions. And the same now, as was already pointed out, the role of the Democratic Party between the railroad strike is another example of how they will do everything to divert strikes and any kind of show of power of the working class. And in the same way, it was approved by the Congress. The Congress ended up deciding instead of the workers about a TA. And that was presented as a positive and progressive thing. Like, oh, we try to get 3 more sick days, 5 more sick days. And, there were like a whole series of demands that workers were fighting for. And they tried to sell this as a progressive aspect, even though it didn't work. So, there are many comments that, the left should not intervene, that it's not space for politics, but then the union will invite AOC, Jamal Bowman, and, not only to widespread the struggle, but to present them as people who defend the working class. And I feel like all this, the fact that the union is having a more militant rhetoric explains also the moments that we are living. Like there is a space for that, but we can't talk about class struggle, strike, and etc. if we don't push also for a political independence perspective, especially in UPS. A lot of the working class, it is said, according to some statistics, that 60% is possible will vote for Trump or voted for Trump. So there are some intellectuals that are saying that this is a chance to move people towards the Democratic Party. So it's like, with the fight between trying to move this one to that one. And it's like, now both of them are ended up defending the interests of the capitalists. And I feel like in this particular case, the government already has 140,000 workers on strike, actors, writers, hotel workers. If UPS has joined that, we would have been 500,000 workers, and we are coming out from the pandemic. There's inflation, economic uncertainty, rent going up, political polarization. So definitely the government didn't want to have 500,000 workers on strike, inspiring other sectors on strike and showing in this, or Trump or Biden. That is, the same movie. Again, if we have 500,000 workers on the street, it's not Trump or Biden, it's Trump, Biden, or the working class. We will have appeared as a strong subject in the national politics, and unfortunately, that didn't happen. And we see already UAW is already tweeting how, Democrats are supporting and Joe Biden will be an ally. So, it's a long fight for class independence.
Thank you, Luigi. Moving over to Jess. Hey, Jess, you're still muted on our end. All right, we'll give her another second here.
Are you guys waiting on me?
Yeah,
Okay, sorry, my signal dropped out for a minute. It just came back on.
that's okay.
Are we still on the government question?
Yeah, we are told by labor leaders it starts.
Yeah. This is all, yeah, it's all to serve, corporate. It's all to serve the people with the biggest pockets. People hoarding all this money, have just expendable resources. And they're just furthering their own interests. Yeah, there is no political party that is for workers. That's just the Democratic Party tries to appeal more to the working class. But we all know that nobody is really advancing the working class. the working class is just being given less and less proportionate to the value that they're creating. You know, people want to argue, oh, well, inflation isn't UPS's fault. Nobody said inflation was directly the fault of UPS, but their profits have risen astronomically despite inflation. So they can afford to pay their people wages above inflation. That's just the basics. So people should be paid proportionate to the value that they are contributing to corporate America. You know, corporate America, whether it's ever going to be completely gone, like probably not, but they can still make money while the working class is still taken care of. Like for example, you know, they could contribute another $5 an hour to every UPS worker's benefit package, and it not even take $3 billion. They would literally still make at least 10 billion in profit a year. Even given that back, that would actually make more of a difference in a TA. Obviously, there's a ton of language that needs to be fixed that affects quality of life that no wage can fix. That's still very important. But, you know, we're not talking about bankrupting the company. People love to throw out these scare tactics of, you're going to price yourself out of a job. You're going to bankrupt the company. They're going to go belly up because you're being so greedy. No, the reason they're making $13 billion a year is because they are the greedy ones that are exploiting every single person. We all deserve to be benefiting from the profits that we're creating. So yeah, you know, we have less buying power than our wages gave us 40 years ago as UPS workers. And not to mention stuff like prices of things that have risen far greater than that of inflation, just because they can, you know. So yeah, the government is not out there thinking about the people at the bottom. You know, they check a few boxes. It's kind of like how UPS does safety, right? They give you a worksheet on, you know, when there's a few minutes of downtime, they cram you this worksheet. They'll even give you the answers to the worksheet, and they check their box off, and then they take that and they wipe their ass. You know, the government checks a few boxes to try to make people think that they're doing a little something for them or whatever. But yeah, there's no political party that's out there for workers. That's just a joke. And the union, you know, they like to support the Democratic Party because Democrats are more likely to secure what do they call it? My state is a right to work, right? So a state that's not right to work. So everybody has to join the union. I do think that that's a good thing. I think everybody should be in the union. So historically, Republicans have put laws in place to make their states right to work, which brings down union activity. That's just what the statistics show. So, you know, for that reason alone, you know, they like to support like the Democratic Party. There's even a form on when you fill out to become a union member. There's a form down at the bottom if you would like to donate, say like $1 a month or something small. Of course, you can go as high as you want, but if you want to donate to this fund that the union uses to support, basically Democrats, they're going to help fund their campaigns, right? Because they're going to do us favors. They're going to put laws in place that benefit workers. That's the idea. But you know, nothing's really changed. We're literally all being made to do with less and less and less. And it can't go on like this forever. I mean, you know, like Jose was saying, there's so many people unhoused. There's so many people that, you know, can't send their kids to college. There's so many people that can't buy a house, can't even rent a house or an apartment. You know, it's taken 4 or 5 incomes to rent one place for people. So yeah, they're doing that by necessity, a lot of people, you know, and it's just not right. People are affording less and less and less and less, while people, a small group of people get richer and richer and richer and richer. And we need to flip those tables. You know, the proportionate of the wealth should be much more distributed among the people in this country. I'm gonna pass it.
Thank you, Jess. Let's go ahead and move over straight into our third question here. With the contract voting closing in just a few days, we've seen a lot of different stances come out of the DSA about how we should be supporting workers. The DSA official line has been, we should remain neutral and let UPS workers decide. Do you think the DSA and its caucuses should be supporting a particular stance, whether it be vote yes or vote no? Starting off here for this third question, we have Jess.
Yeah. You know, I haven't known much about the DSA for very long, just a few months ago. I do think in my local area, they have been active in the contract campaign, in supporting practice pickets, in trying to make preparations to support UPS workers in the event of a strike. I do think that they are trying to support the workers. You know, it's hard to say what I think they should do, just because, you know, I don't know much about the inner workings. But in general, I think corporate America, the politics, all that's the media that's being so loud in this misleading idea that this is some big win. I think we need a lot of voices to counter that, because there are a huge amount of that. So I do think we need to counter that, regardless of if you're voting yes or voting no. It's not the idea that they're trying to paint. It's just not. And that needs to be told. The stuff that's painted as wins, you know, these glossy highlights where they don't give you, you know, the fine details or the loopholes about how the company is actually going to exploit this this little improvement that we think we added. That stuff needs to be brought to light, so that people can decide if this is a good contract or not. And what I see mostly is people agreeing, once they see all the information, that it's really not that good. It's just not. And you know, we've had a lot of sellout contracts in the past, so there were huge expectations on this, and our leadership also instilled those expectations. They talked like we were going to go to war and that Teamsters were going to bring home a win. This TA is not a win. Teamsters have not brought this win home yet, despite what they would lead everybody to think, even Teamsters. But there's plenty of Teamsters that are saying, no, this is not a win. We need to fix a lot of things before we can call this a win. And that's what we need to be doing. You know, we need to fix stuff. I've heard so many people that are voting yes say, like, you know, yeah, you know, some things fell short, but, you know, this is probably the best we're going to get. Right? They're too scared for the next step. They think if we vote it down, we're automatically going to strike. Sean O'Brien does not want to strike. Joe Biden does not want to strike. Carol Tomei does not want to strike. You know, they're probably going to slice off a tiny little corner. You know, that tiny corner that's stuck on the pan anyway, that's just a pain in the ass. They're going to scrape off that little corner and give us a little bit more, right? To make our lives just a little bit better. And it's going to be enough to people say, okay, this is a real improvement. But it's not going to be much skin off their back. Even giving us a good contract is not going to be skin off their back. They don't want to do it. But at the end of the day, Carol Tomei is going to be just fine. The shareholders are going to be just fine. And maybe our fellow Teamsters will also be okay. That's what we're going for. And, you know, I just think that there needs to be a lot of voices clearing things up. Regardless of if you're trying to tell someone explicitly, vote no. Tell them why that they should consider voting no. Make them think that just make them do a little critical thinking to see if it's really a good deal that they're being sold, or if that's not really what's going on here. And you know, it's not really what's going on here. And people are seeing that. So I think there needs to be voices against that specifically.
Thank you, Jess. Moving over to Corbin.
Yeah, so the DSA has been actively involved in the contract campaign. As a political ally of Sean O'Brien, it was bragged about at the Solidarity Captain meetings. The DSA has participated actively in collaboration with IBT leadership to get where we've gotten so far, and to pretend now that now is the time for everyone who's so far been an active participant in this contract campaign to shut up, and let everyone else speak, and let the misinformation spread that's been spread by IBT leadership. There's a level of complicity that the DSA is going to have to accept. They've been an active participant. They've pushed a particular line on this contract. They may not go as far as the Democratic Party politicians have in celebrating it as a historic victory officially, but their silence speaks in the same way. Their lack of a willingness to speak out against the misrepresentation of how much UPS workers are going to make under this contract, for instance, like the first question, or the just the lack of position is itself taking a position and letting the forces that have the power of the capital, the American government, and the organized labor leadership, versus this Teamsters Mobilize, which has done a lot, but they don't have the millions of dollars in dues money to spend on this that the IBT does. It's a David and Goliath type of story, and if you don't say anything and you don't do anything, you're letting the Goliath, in this instance, capital, win. So without breaking the silence is like the first step for the DSA, to essentially be on the right side of history on this, to move forward and begin taking active steps to support the militant rank and file, and not the vocally militant leadership whose effect on the ground is almost imperceptible.
Thank you, Corbin. Let's see here. Moving over to. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Moving over to Jose.
Yes, I think Jess and Corbin put it adequately when it came to that question. But for me, how do I think the DSA and its caucus should be supporting a particular stance, whether it's a yes vote or a no vote? But we see that corporate media, Wall Street, and the political duopoly system, they've taken a stand. They've all been celebrating this tentative agreement as historic, a game changer. Even some left-wing YouTube channels and podcasts have been celebrating this, and so have other leftist organizations, Freedom Socialist Road, or whatever they call themselves. I forgot. Hopefully, I didn't butcher their name. PSL. They've been celebrating this contract. So you like Corbin said, being silent speaks volumes. If you say that you're in solidarity with all the workers, and if you have organizing committees to organize workshops throughout this country, then listen to some of the workers, right? We're telling you that this contract is not what it is. But when you have individuals that are in positions of power in these organizations, and they have a vested interest in seeing a tentative agreement go through, best believe they're going to use their influence to persuade a lot of people not to listen to those liars, to those misinformationists, to those conspiracy theorists that we've been labeled. So they need to take a stand, regardless if it's DSA or other organizations. You need to take a stand. And how can you call yourself a socialist or a communist and support any contract that doesn't uplift the lives of workers, that doesn't give us real power, that doesn't let us have control of the means of production? We're always told, oh, we can't dictate how the company runs its operation. We can't tell them how to run their business, so on and so forth. But isn't that what a contract's supposed to do? Isn't that why we go into these streets? Isn't that why there was general strikes in France? Isn't there why Teamsters in 1934 rebelled in Minneapolis, or the auto workers in I forget that plant where they had a sit down in the 30s? So we could have a say when it comes to the modes of production, when it comes to our life.
Thank you, Jose. Moving over to Andre.
Yeah, I think Corbin makes a very good point that it's not like DSA hasn't been taking a stance as an organization throughout. They have been like stumping for the O'Brien leadership, and by making the kind of trying to adopt like a neutral position. There is no neutral position here. There is a very obvious sellout contract being pushed on us by the IBT leadership, by the state. And how, like, to echo what Jose said, how can you call yourself a socialist if you're not speaking out against that? So I think absolutely anyone who considers themselves a socialist, who wants to be advancing the interests of the working class, needs to take a stand here and now. And I think there's no good reason not to, except for, I guess, maybe wanting to, appeal to those powers that are pushing this. If it means like climbing the ranks of the union bureaucracy, or not upsetting the state, whether maybe people are trying to, I don't know, basically prioritize those interests of the capitalist class over the UPS workers here. So I think unequivocally, the DSA should have, and any organization, like Jose said, should be taking a stand to support a no vote, to call this sellout TA what it is. And if there are members, if it seems based on like the DSA leadership not attending this call, the new leadership, if the national leadership isn't doing that, then all those members within DSA who see the need for that need to be pushing to actually be part of real militant organization within the labor movement and supporting that. I think, to the different points that people have brought up about like the larger capitalist system here, like what does it mean actually, like Jose said, for the workers to own the means of production, to actually be able to direct, the society. I think for that to happen, I think we're not able to do that in any contract, like so long as we still live in a capitalist society that's run by the capitalist class. They won't allow that. So I think what we need is for the working class to have actual political power. I think, like to our discussion previously about the question of there's no parties out there that actually represent the interests of the working class. I think that's true. Obviously the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and I would argue also the Green Party and the People's Party. But I think we desperately need an actual working class party that is going to fight for the interests of the working class, which is not just getting like a few more crumbs or like Jess said, like, whatever's still stuck on the pan, but is actually about the ultimate interests of the working class to abolish capitalism, for revolution, for socialism. And so I think, we need like all those like militants in the labor movement need to get organized in an organization of like the militant minority, which there is a history of in the United States, in the 20s and 30s, led by the CP. I think the CPUSA, that's like very important history for us to look at because we don't have to start from scratch here. I think we need that kind of an organization to be able to lead actually the labor movement in the direction of actually fighting for the working class's interests, and can actually like defend against and fight against all these attacks that we're going to face from the state, from the corporations, from union leadership. So yeah, and I think that's absolutely possible, like things don't have to be this way. We don't have to live in a society where it's the way things are run is just actually based off, like the way that our whole society is run is based off of the capitalists exploiting the working class. It's not an easy fight, but it's definitely something that we should and need to fight to change. So I think, just to bring it back to DSA, like if people consider themselves socialists, then people need to take a stand here.
Thank you, Audrey. Really quick here before we move on to our next panelist. If you've been one of our guests who have stuck along this long, we are doing a Q&A, so go ahead and either stack or type your question in the chat. We probably only take one or two. Now moving on to Shuvu.
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. And, in this panel, I think an interesting fact to note is the only DSA UPSer is Corbin. He's in St. Louis, right? I'm a DSAer here, and then Red Labor is the DSA caucus, which has actually pushed this forward. All the NPC candidates have been reached out to. Other caucuses had been reached out to at least participate in this call, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with whether DSA should take a side or not. But I think the very fact that like this, no one showed up, I think it really speaks to what I would characterize the DSA's stance on this as a centrist stand. Okay, centrist stand means that you can hold on to like revolutionary and like really progressive phrasing of, you know, we want to support the workers, we want to make sure they get the best that they can, we're going to leave it up to the workers. But then in essence, you're still subordinating yourself to the right. And Jess brought this up, Audrey brought this up, every other panelist brought this up. It's like workers organizing for Vote No are dealing with such a huge disinformation campaign from the Teamsters leadership, from the Vote Yes forces, from UPS, from the government. So this is the moment where socialists should be taking a stand, using the resources that we have to actually push for Vote No. That's what I think we should be doing. There's 60 DSA UPSers, okay? Many of them are going to be voting no. Many of them are already organizing for Vote No in their warehouses. Corbin was one of the 60 DSA UPSers, and he was in a strike, like a DSA UPS shed. He was the only one that got kicked out. He's here, okay? So that speaks to something. I think the problem is in DSA, we have done a lot of good support with the practice pickets showing up, but then it's important to show up. But right at this moment, when we need socialists to show up the most, when DSA UPSers could, with the support of the organization, organize like Vote No pickets, Vote No informationals, right at that moment, we're not doing anything. And I think that really speaks to something in this organization. I mean, last point too, I think we have basically subordinated ourselves to the union bureaucracy by not taking a stand. And there's a reason for that also. I think the reason is that within the DSA, we have antagonist forces in the same organizations. You have workers who are organizing for Vote coexisting with workers who have deep ties to the union bureaucracy. Sean Orr is a TDU International Steering Committee member, okay? If a member like that came out for Vote No, that would mean him going against the TDU, which is pushing for a Vote Yes. It would mean actually standing up for something and risking your relationships with union bureaucrats. So I think that's a really critical problem in the DSA that we have to tackle. Like in critical moments like these, are we willing to actually like to risk relationships with union bureaucracy and stand on the side of the working class, to risk harassment from management, to risk harassment from Teamster leadership? I mean, it's the right thing to do. We should be doing it. But you know, I hope that this conversation at least kind of opens that up. I mean, come on, folks. You guys are organizing for Vote No in your own warehouses. Your organization, the DSA, should be supporting your efforts. Folks should come out, speak openly about this need. So, yeah.
Thank you, Shuwu. Moving over to Tony.
Yeah, any socialist organization with any ounce of principle should be standing with the workers against the reactionary IBT union leadership and supporting a Vote No campaign. The support of outside socialist organizations is absolutely essential to rebuild workers' power in reactionary unions like the Teamsters. As we've heard on this call, UPS workers must not only must struggle against UPS and its finance capital shareholders, we must not only struggle against their political representatives in the Democratic Republican parties, but also against capital's labor lieutenants in union leadership that has for decades crushed rank and file workers' struggle. In this context, the support of socialist organizations to advance the workers' struggle is absolutely critical. For socialist organizations to side with capital's labor lieutenants and union leadership is to abandon the workers and to abandon the basic principles of socialism. Within the Vote No campaign, we discussed National DSA's line of supposed neutrality in this struggle. And as others have illustrated, this supposed neutrality is totally false. DSA has taken a line, and that line is not the workers' line. And Jess said it best in this discussion within the Vote No campaign, quoting Desmond Tutu's famous words, "If you're neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." So let us rid ourselves of any mythology of neutrality being possible. So this line of national DSA betrays the very class they claim to champion. Far from being neutral in the class struggle, socialists must be both deeply integrated with workers and leading workers' struggle. Audrey talked earlier about how the call is for socialists and militant workers to bore from within reactionary unions, to wrest control from reactionary leadership, to develop the workers' movement in our country. And yeah, I agree with Audrey. In order to do this in an organized way and on a national scale, we need a militant minority labor organization, like we've had in the past with the Trade Union Education League in the 1920s. So if you're in the DSA, you want to develop the worker struggle, and you disagree with DSA National's leadership's line, take up this call. Don't be discouraged. Join us. Organize workers with us at UPS. We might not have the funds. We might be facing so many enemies on every side. But if we champion the objective interests of the working class, the overwhelming majority, we can absolutely take on our enemies and win.
Thank you, Tony. Moving over to Luigi.
Hey, so yes, in the same line that other Teamsters have already said, the context is that there is a huge machine going on to push for the vote yes. Politicians, union, capitalist spreads, as Jose said, including sector of the left, like PSL. So imagine if you as a worker want to listen a critical assessment of the TA, not even looking for support to the vote no, like someone who is telling you, dude, this is the good things, or this is the bad things, and this is the contradiction, these are the problems. That's not even happening. So it's not, you have, DSA is a big tent, so there are different tendencies, different approaches, but you have all the elected officials that were saying publicly immediately that this was a historic contract, while not even the DSA member who works at UPS has said a word about it. So not even the elected officials are respecting whatever decision the people who's working at UPS is gonna take. So I think that's it's a first problem. And there is little space for the vote no. We don't have the resources. All the union officials are just saying historical contract. Nobody's saying shortcomings. Nobody's saying, oh, I know that this is not good, but the next time. No, it's like totally positive, historic, no problems at all, which is not true. So how in this context workers can decide if you have all this machine against the vote no or in favor of the vote yes? Like minimum, we should be pushing for parking lots meetings where we can openly discuss the pros and cons and have I think Jess said this, debate is good, so that if someone's gonna vote yes, has to know what are the consequences or what are the bad things that are gonna come with this contract. And at the same time, people who has the position to vote no, we should have the right to say what we think. And so if we are not having spaces to discuss, we are facing all these machine against us, and then some left groups are not taking a position for the vote no, everything becomes much harder for us. And this is not about, it would be great to turn down the TA, go back to negotiation table, bring the strike as an option again, and start organizing to it. But even if the vote no doesn't get so many votes, or the percentage is not that large, etc., as someone already said, even the people who's voting yes, it's not that they're voting yes because they think this is historical. They're voting yes because how the TA was presented, because all this operation for the vote yes, and the divisions that are growing between part-timers and drivers, make some people think that now the scenario is harder. So even people who's voting yes is having reservations, are knowing the shortcomings, and many of them are even trying to think to organize for the future. So people have high expectations, people want more, people deserve more. They felt in power, they were willing to go on a strike, and we need to support that. We need to support that movement, because even if you fail or you don't succeed in voting no, you are building the basis for the future. It's not like the basis will happen with shop floor and organizing against the bosses. That's one part. But if you don't take the right conclusions of this struggle, then you are limited. And I feel like a lot of people is searching for a critical assessment, at least, and it's not finding DSA as a source for that. Like now, Labor Notes came with an article, that is still praising the contract, but it's showing, oh, okay, there are all these shortcomings, there are all these voices against. We should at least acknowledge them, because otherwise, how people can trust you in the future if we're not shining light in the problem that we have now with this TA. And and I think socialists, we also have this challenge or this goal of not only talk about the TA, not only about the contract itself, but bring the political scenario, the political context, and again, showing that Democrats and Republicans don't represent our interest. And the lesson that we take from from this contract negotiation has also to be linked to the need of having a new organization that represents the working class and has a socialist perspective that challenges all the largest aspects, because we are also having problems with the rent, with climate, and so many issues that goes beyond what we can do in our workforce. So the struggle is larger, and we have to take any opportunity to advance in our workplaces.
Thank you, Luigi. That should round out our third question here. Again, we petitioned some time for Q&A. We are running a bit long. If you have a question and you're a member in the audience here, go ahead and stack to ask it or type it up. I believe I saw one earlier. Let's see. From Anthony Taylor. Why has, at these webinars, there's never been an admission that our true strike threat was less than revolutionary, to say the least? If you're a panelist, you can go ahead and either raise your hand or stack to answer that. And again, if you're a viewer, you can either stack or type your question.
Could I just ask Anthony to explain the question a little bit more?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can you see me? Oh, no, my front camera doesn't work. I forgot.
We could see you.
Okay. Oh, you can see me? Oh,
It was
okay.
working. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, and I had a comment also that I think gives some some context to this. I'm trying to find it in here. But you know, we all, you know, myself included, we wanted to go on strike. Everybody in here obviously would love to go on strike, you know, but let's be honest, a lot of people didn't want to go on strike. A lot of people would have crossed the picket line. So, yeah. So what, you know, there's never, you guys never have ever weighed that. Everybody's just talking about, you need to go on strike right now. We need to take a stand. The time is now. But you never, ever seem to weigh the, you know, like, are you going to win? Because if you lose, what happens if you lose? Have you ever thought about what happens if you lose?
Can you
It could be
concisely phrase the
catastrophic.
question?
It could be catastrophic.
In 97.
So
Sorry.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Anthony. Just finish your question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, you know, let's see, where did we start with the question? The question restated. There's never been an admission that our true strike threat was less than revolutionary. Was that the question that we're going off of?
Yes, I guess. And then
Yeah, I mean, and we're talking about revolution. Everyone on here, oh, the system, we got to take down the system. Okay, are we going to do that with this strike? So, I mean, let's I just want to see, I'm with it. Vote no. I'm voting no. You know, but are you gonna ever really get down into the nitty gritty and be, you know, like, let's get really serious about this and talk about what would have really happened if we would have gone on strike, and what happens if you lose, and what if, the point is, what if O'Brien, I don't love O'Brien anymore, but what if he had good reason to believe that we shouldn't go on strike right now? That's the question.
I think we have to be truthful to ourselves and truthful to the members at all times and know the possibilities of what happened. But let's not forget, we've seen 4 straight years of record profits. UPS called us essential. And I don't know if you're a driver, Tony. I mean, Anthony, it looks like you are with the Browns. You might be in feeder, I'm not sure. But if you were there during that time, like I was, you know, part-timers were working in my shift, which is in my hub, which is a small hub. It's only 2 operations, twilight and preload. Twilight, we're working like 10 hours a day. We're told to come in on Saturdays, and those Saturdays were 8 hours, and come in on Sundays, and those shifts were 6 hours. We have been put through the ringer for this corporation. And if we would talk about the nitty gritty, we need to talk about the nitty gritty. We have boss laws in this contract that doesn't allow us to do wildcat strikes. You know, how the fuck is that even possible? You're handcuffing us. You're handcuffing what we could really show this corporation. And then we're signing another 5-year contract with boss laws in this contract that only benefit one side, which is UPS. You know, we have to be realistic. We have to tell the members this might happen. But you know what? This is a stand that we need to take, regardless of what our leaders say, our so-called leaders, our position holders. We need to take a stand. Same like in 97, where they were fighting for part-timers, because part-timers were getting the shaft. You know, they went in 82, the shift changed from $12 they were making to $8. And then drivers went from 12 to 15. You know, they try to correct that wrong. You know, it is what it is. But we had the momentum. Everything was on our back to get a real historic contract where the floor would have been for 25 for part-timers and make some real changes for their lives. But what do we get? 21. There's an in and out, literally almost 2 minutes away from my hub. If you catch 1 minute if you catch the two green lights. And they start you off there at $19. Who are we competing with? Are we competing with DHL? Are we competing with FedEx? Are we competing with Amazon? No, we're competing with fast food restaurants. This is $1 billion corporation. We had to take a stand. You know, maybe we will, maybe we won't. I don't know. We still got to see how this vote we have to see this vote outcome, excuse me. And it's going to come in. We have less than a week. We'll see what happens. And then we'll see what O'Brien does. We'll see if he's a true militant, like, you know, these organizations are calling him. We'll see that.
Thank you, Jose. Moving over to Shuvu.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick on this since Audrey's on too. But I think that was like a really excellent question, Anthony. And that's something which I think it's to the shame of the socialist movement, particularly the DSA with Strike Ready, to not explain exactly the barriers to a strike. And just to be completely clear here, folks, like if workers vote down the contract, it doesn't mean a strike's going to happen. It means it goes back to the bargaining table. And let's not forget that the U.S. government can also invoke Taft-Hartley if they need to crush the strike by law. And that's not also to mention that the union only had 3 weeks worth of strike pay for this contract battle, which was left kind of hidden and vague from the membership, and something which socialists did not mention either. I mean, I think over this past year, we were all under almost like a self-delusion that, you know, we're completely and utterly prepared to go on strike. There was a recent video with a CWA president stating that like Sean O'Brien and the Teamsters had not contacted them or any major large trade union about strike preparations, which he thought was insane because it's like, if you're gonna take if you're going to take this huge union into a strike, then you need the rest of the labor movement behind you. So yeah, I think that's a really credible and like important question to ask. I mean, truth be told, I don't think that anyone was really prepared for a strike. That being said, it is a weapon that workers have. That being said, it is something which and the Teamsters leadership is promised to do. So I think it's important to hold the leadership accountable, and the workers voting and mobilizing for Vote No are doing that. But absolutely, yeah, like that's one thing we need to be clear about going forward. I think all workers need to be clear about: are we actually prepared? And if we're not, then it's the responsibility of a socialist to make that clear in their workplaces to the public, and not hide the facts. Yeah.
Thank you, Shuvu. Moving over to Andre.
Yeah. Well, first I'll just agree. I think it's been very clear that O'Brien is no militant, just to respond to some of the stuff in the chat. And I think however much the IBT leadership changes their stance is directly correlated to actually how much pressure we're able to put on them as the workers to actually push for real militancy and for a real struggle to happen, because, you know, there was no fight here. Like how the media is portraying and kind of different supposedly progressive organizations like the Teamsters fought and won, there wasn't a fight. There was a very neat, fast agreement between the union leadership and the company. But in terms of the workers, the members actually being able to wage this struggle, actually being able to go on strike, you know, that was taken off the table by the union leadership. I think there was a credible strike threat. I think, like I mentioned earlier, there was increasing support for it from my coworkers, seeing the fact that we needed to go on strike to actually be able to wage this real fight to win our demands. But But I think there's also, a difference between what was going on amongst the workers and what was going on amongst the leadership, which was actually to take many, many steps by the leadership to stop a strike from happening. And like constantly the rhetoric was there of like, oh, well, we'll only strike if UPS strikes itself, and like at my local meeting, when people brought up questions about the possibility of a strike at the last general membership meeting that we had before this TA came out, the response of the local leadership was like, well, we really, really do not want a strike to happen. And of course, there are risks, I think Anthony brought up, but there's always going to be risks. And the kind of argument that, oh, well, what if you strike, or even what if you just vote no on the contract, and the company ends up giving actually less? I mean, that's like such a common kind of refrain and tactic to make us be so afraid to not even stand up because, we might lose. I think in this moment, there was real support for a strike. I think we could have absolutely gotten a much better tentative agreement if we'd actually gone on strike. And of course, I think if there had been a strike, I think the union leadership would have moved to end it very quickly, to come to an agreement with the company on something that probably wouldn't have been so historic. So I think there would have been a struggle even in that scenario, and that still may happen. It's possible we'll strike, although that does seem to me less and less likely. But just I'll say briefly to the question of, okay, well, if we're talking about the larger capitalist system, the need for revolution, well, is a strike going to do that? Is a strike going to kind of lead us to the revolution? No, it's not. A strike is, in this scenario, would have been something like a very strong tool to actually wage this struggle for, better wages, better working conditions. If we can't even do that, both because if we're not organized amongst, the working class enough to actually push for that, and when we're facing the repression from our union leadership, if we can't even do that, then how are we going to, actually be able to have a revolution? So I think there's we have to be able to advance in these kinds of day-to-day struggles in our contract fights to even be able to build up our strength for actually building a revolutionary movement, for revolutionary struggle. So that's my thought on the question between the relation of those two things.
Thank you, Audrey. Would any other panelists like to stack to answer this question? If you can't type in the chat due to being at work or not being able to access it, you can also just yell out. Okay, let's see. Let's go ahead and move over to, let's see. It seems like Joseph Balkus has his hand up to ask a question. Joseph, if you'd like, you can.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've been organizing the vote no in 705. I was out at Westmont today. They called the police on me. 2 squad cars showed up, and then I sent the police cars packing, and I was still out there flyering and handing out, vote no stickers. But yeah, I don't know what's up with Anthony Taylor about organizing the vote no. I don't think, I don't know. He doesn't want to. He's too afraid to mess up his relationship with the union officials. He's probably there tearing down the vote no signs at his building. But my question is, I've organized with DSA members in Chicago around various issues. I got nothing against, DSA members per se. I think, a lot of DSA members want to do good, but the DSA org is a part of the Demon Rat Party. They're a professional managerial class org, like, many leftist orgs in this country, and I feel they're like a bad faith actor. And why would you organize with the group instead of forming another group, work with some other peoples, whatever? Because I feel that they would undermine any real struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Panels, if you'd like to respond to that, please stack. Or you can just unmute and start talking, either way. I think this will probably be our last question here. Okay, Shubu.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question, Joe. I'm not sure I'd agree with comments about Anthony. But I think as to like why organizing with, like, why am I in this organization? To be completely frank, I'm pretty much, I've been really sidelined in this org at this point, made sort of a pariah. I've been suspended from a decent caucus for pretty much adding people on Twitter, all right, which is kind of ridiculous. Adding, saying at like DSA labor leadership, like, guys, come on, like, do something about vote no. Directly posing questions to DSA UPSers who are also labor leaders. What side are you guys on? Where are you voting? I think the reason why one should still organize and like fight within DSA is that you have to go and fight wherever there's socialists, wherever there's a mass of workers. Doesn't matter how reactionary the organization is, doesn't matter how many enemies there are in the organization, one has a responsibility to fight. But I think I do agree with you in that one's horizon should not be just the DSA, because there's plenty of workers, plenty of militants who are organizing outside of it, either in like independent cells, other parties, other formations. So it's important to just have like a broad sort of view, fight where you can. I think in this historical moment, like, we need a regroupment of the socialist movement under some sort of like an independent party banner. My hope is that the Cornell West run could potentially become that vehicle. I'm not going to put all my hope in that. I think if it doesn't fizzle, if it doesn't pan out, then once you still have to fight within the DSA and outside of it also. But yeah, I mean, now's the time to really start forming links with socialists across the aisle in different organizations, have like some sort of common objectives to work towards. As in this case, it's the Vote No campaign for UPSers, and mobilize on that front. But to just abstain, Lenin wouldn't abstain, Trotsky wouldn't abstain, none of the real revolutionaries would abstain. They would fight. And I think that's what one has to do.
Thank you, Shubu. Are any more panelists stacking for this question before we go to closing remarks? Okay, great. Jose, if you're still here, if you want to take a minute to go ahead and say your closing remarks, feel free to start now.
My closing remarks is that if you're in DSA and you work at UPS and you feel that your voice is not being heard because you have objections with this contract, with the tentative agreement, excuse me, I would encourage you all to give Teamster Mobilize an opportunity to address those issues and to hear your voice, so we could have a collective voice and a collective message and a collective action moving forward from this tentative agreement. I would like to thank everybody on this call today, evening, excuse me. It was enlightening. It's always a pleasure to be with the rank and file, especially those that are UPS Teamsters like myself. And yeah, just if you feel your voice is not being heard, we're listening to the voices in Teamster Mobilize. Sometimes democracy is messy, but democracy is what needs to be in the forefront of any organization. You shouldn't silence anybody because they have a differing view, or they shouldn't silence somebody because the leadership is in collaboration with other organizations to benefit themselves. And everything needs to benefit the workers. If it's not benefiting the workers, then you're just a sellout. And I'm sorry to say that, but if your main objective is not to better the lives of the working class, then that's what you are. You're a class traitor. You're just saying, you're just trying to move up the ladder. You're not really in this for the right reasons. And you have to be in this for the right reasons. You have to see the daily struggles that UPSers go through, whether it's working 10 hours and you have so many stops and you have management sending you stuff on the diet, saying you're over allowance or whatever harassment they want to give you. Or if it's a part-timer and you have management pushing down these fictitious PPH, what they call pieces per hour, down your throat to scare you. You know, you have to listen to those voices. You have to listen to the voices of those that are unhoused, you know, and you have to listen to the voices that are living in shelters. And what can we do to better them? $21 is not doing enough to benefit them. We always have to have that in our hearts that we have to do what needs to be done for the working class. And thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you for having other Teamsters Mobilize to speak, giving us a chance to communicate our message. There's quite a few of us on this call. We all come from different perspectives and different regions. But one thing that we all have in common is to push forth the working class agenda. For them is what we do, and for them is why we take the bullets we take. It's for them that we get chastised. It's for them that we get ridiculed when we stand up for them. And it's why we get ridiculed by other Teamsters, because they have benefited. I'm happy you benefited. But an injury to one is an injury to all. And thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Moving over to Corbin.
I think I can turn my camera on now. So I want to thank Red Labor and Shivu and everyone for organizing this. You know, now is the start of, you know, a real political movement within the Teamsters that isn't, you know, at least I don't believe is capable of being co-opted in the same way that the TDUs, you know, historically was and has been, as we can see now. You know, we're seeing right now the rank and file organizing themselves into an organization to push union leadership to more radical demands and to greater transparency. You know, it's a goal that, you know, I would presume the DSA largely agrees with, but when it comes to the political realities of having to you know, commit to taking action, commit to supporting it, you know, the political implications, you know, leaves many people to choose the easy way out and staying quiet. You know, and I think we've seen here, you know, staying quiet is taking a side. Staying quiet, as the DSA has, or abstaining from a position as the DSA has, you know, it just leaves us under the control of, you know, the Democratic Party within the union, within, you know, the union leadership, and leaves us without a political objective to strive forward. You know, it necessarily leaves us with always trying to, you know, excommunicate politics from union business, which just isn't possible. But yeah, I want to thank everyone for coming, and yeah, thank you for hosting.
Thank you, Corbin. Moving over to Andre.
Yeah, thanks everyone for for attending. Thanks for those who organized this panel. I mean, it's very important to talk about these larger questions of, you know, what we're actually doing in these struggles, and, you know, our larger objectives. Like, yes, we're fighting for a better contract, but like, is it just to get a slightly higher wage? Or do we really need to be fighting for, you know, real political power for the working class? Like, these are important questions to be talking about. And I hope that, yeah, this can be the beginning of kind of further discussion amongst all of us who see the need to really advance the working class movement, and see that, you know, this UPS struggle and taking a stand here against the sellout TA is a part of that. And I think, yeah, I think we've had some very good discussion about the fact that there is no class neutral position here. that does not exist. And yeah, and I think, like there is a real need, as we've been talking about throughout, but like Corbin just mentioned, for a real militant organization within the Teamsters and more broadly, not just in the Teamsters, but across unions, across industries, to actually organize the, great majority of the working class in our country that is not unionized. And I think such a militant organization needs to be based on a fierce struggle of labor against capital. Because without that, then like there's so much pressure on union struggles to actually just go a reformist route. Just say that, okay, yeah, maybe we can get a fair contract or something if we have slightly higher wages or better benefits or something like that. So I think those people who see the need to actually wage that struggle, and to be unflinching in that struggle, no matter the attacks that we may face, I think we need to be organized together. So I would just say to anyone who's interested in talking further about these different topics, talking through some of the history of actual communist organizing in the labor movement, please reach out. I know, like, I myself definitely want to talk more about this. I know other panelists do as well. I'd mentioned in the chat, but I have an article in Cosmonaut kind of breaking down this stuff in much more detail. So I'd really love to hear the feedback and thoughts of everyone here. So yeah, just thank you, everyone. And I feel very hopeful about kind of advancing forward in this moment.
Thank you, Audrey. Moving over to Shubu.
Yeah, I don't have much to say. Just thank you for organizing this panel. Thank you for everyone that came on. And let's just do our best to spread the word on this and move forward. And also, out of this Vote No movement, I'm looking forward to seeing what sort of organization is formed to carry on the torch of truth, transparency, and power to the rank and file.
Thank you, Shubu. Lastly, moving over to Tony. Tony, you there?
So he's having issues with his mic in the chat.
Gotcha. Okay. That's all right. Okay, I believe that rounds out our closing remarks for all the panelists that are still here. Again, I want to thank all the panelists that were here tonight that lost precious sleep, who have, I imagine, jobs in the morning. Thank you all so much for being here and for being part of this incredibly important conversation. I look forward to what comes out of this. I also want to thank all the viewers that stuck around till the end, and all the viewers that were here for the rest of the panel that had to leave. Again, thank you to Teamsters Mobilize, as well as LeftVoice for helping organize this. If you haven't already, please follow at Red Labor Caucus on Twitter, Instagram. If you want to join the struggle for an independent worker party, please sign up to join us on redlabor.org. I've been your host, Zeth Rourke, for this evening. And as always, towards class independence, towards worker and farmers government. Thank you all.